everyone, Laylee here, and today I have an interview with Shay here for you. In this interview, I ask him about Phantom Forces and Call of Robloxia, and especially for Call of Robloxia, it can help to get you an idea for where that game is going in the future, and at least for Phantom Forces, what you might expect to be able to see. It has been 2 years, over 2 years, since my previous interview with Shay, and so this was long overdue, but hopefully you enjoy. So for the first question, what do development and updates look like for Phantom Forces after Call of Robloxia is released? Are there any solid plans for big updates for Phantom Forces outside of what we can expect? A total framework rework perhaps?
Yeah, so Call of Robloxia, we don't really have a set time frame in which we want it released. Initially, we wanted it by Christmas, but that is looking more and more like that won't be the case. Just like looking at our work schedule and stuff like that. In terms of Phantom Forces, we want to support it as long as we have a solid player base. So as long as we have a good player base and it's financially in a good spot to like continue support, then we will continue to support it. In terms of updates, I want to introduce cosmetics, and then I also did a thing where what was it, the hub? I hinted at adding a server browser to Phantom Forces, and that's something we definitely want to introduce. And a lot of these updates going forward are just their quality of life, and then there's content, and then on top of that there's just work we're doing for Phantom Forces to improve our skills going into Call of Robloxia. So
Nice.
like, yeah.
Alright, so next question. How will the maps in Call of Robloxia differ from what we have in Phantom Forces? It looks like y'all are using Roblox terrain as opposed to the triangle terrain.
Yeah, so we're trying to figure out a good balance in performance in Call of Robloxia, so that's why we're moving away from triangle terrain. Parts are definitely less performance efficient, but as of maps, I'm not 100% sure, just because we're kind of still working that all out. But for the most part, I want to support more than just one gameplay. So 32 player servers down to like COD sort of servers, so like 12, so 6v6, so smaller maps. Just kind of like going into this project, we want to have a bigger game than Phantom Forces in terms of just what audience it appeals to. So that even includes like potentially having vehicles, like doing Battlefield, so 64 player, like, yeah, like
That
games.
sounds ambitious for the platform.
Yeah, it's totally ambitious, but at the moment we're trying to just go into it with the idea that we're going to make a first-person shooter. Yeah, and that's a stretch goal of ours, is potentially having vehicles, but it's not anywhere near even like full-on consideration yet. So yeah.
And then in these new maps that we're having for core, will the cover of them be maybe more terrain oriented, possibly stemming to using tall grass or foliage as cover?
So tall grass is kind of hard because I think it's performance, like it depends on what graphics quality you have enabled on your player or your client. But I think for the most part it depends on the map. Like we're still going to have towns and cities, and at the same time we're going to do like the Ardennes, so that's like forest and yeah, beaches of Normandy and stuff like that. Just iconic locations that you can kind of put into a World War II game.
Mm-hmm. So with that, will certain maps, like the D-Day map is one that I think of when I think of the older Call of Robloxia maps, but also some other notable ones, will we see kind of revamps or very big overhauls of those make an appearance?
So this kind of plays into allowing more than just one type of game mode or gameplay in our game. And I mean, that's mostly why we're pushing for this hub for Phantom Forces, is we can apply it to any game we go forward with. But for the most part, like, this is kind of our idea is to have like throwback Call of Robloxia if someone wanted to play that, or just revamped Call of Robloxia, but at the same time not force that on the player. So yeah.
All right. So next question, how are updates for Call of Robloxia planned to be carried out? I know this is far in the future, so it's hard to really envision that, but could we be seeing updates on a regular monthly schedule or a weekly schedule perhaps?
So that totally depends on how fast we can roll out content for the game, but I've already written up a lot of content to add in terms of at least weapons. And for the most part, we're going to start with just Germany and the United States, and then expand from there. So, like, there's a lot more countries in World War II than that. And with that idea, we could potentially roll out updates with a country's theme. So, like, if I wanted to add Poland or Finland or Italy, any of those countries, I can make the group of weapons and just roll it out in terms of progression. So we're kind of pushing for a like World of Tanks or War Thunder sort of progression line in terms of firearms, and this would be how we achieve that, these country-based updates. I just don't know what time frame we'd be looking at there.
All right. So next question, what can be said, if anything, about equipment in Call of Robloxia?
That kind of plays into potentially having vehicles. I don't think it's going to work its way into PvP, but at the same time, it's so early in development, I don't really know. I think if we were to have equipment, potentially having certain game modes not involve equipment might be a better route than having it just fully available to everyone. But yeah, it's relatively new in the project. So, yeah.
So next question, with the overwhelming amount of support for the Phantom Forces server hub, as you touched on earlier, what is the status of something like that?
So, like, for the most part, we want to end the game by Christmas. I don't know exactly how far, how much of a task it's going to be, but pretty much. Well, what we have all the foundation to support it. It's just UI at this point. We have servers, like our own servers, to keep track of the Roblox servers. So we have all the foundation in place. It's just putting it all or applying it all at this point. So yeah, hopefully by December of this year, we'll see a hub.
Gotcha.
Along with that, like, I want to get cosmetics in by December of this year as well. So that's, yeah.
And you mentioned having something similar in Call of Robloxia, but is it possible that they could maybe be united under a server hub where you can pick which game you want to browse, perhaps?
Yeah, so like, we were even thinking having something more interactive. So, like, like the barracks and Call of Duty World War II, that sort of idea. I thought it was kind of neat if we had like not really a story, but a conquest mode, and as each team progresses, if one team's winning, the barracks turns into more of a German camp or American camp. But like that's totally like not like we can't apply that idea yet. But for the most part, like we want a UI based hub as along with a potentially more interactive hub. But what was the question?
Like connecting the two games through a single hub, maybe?
Maybe. We're definitely not to that, like, we're not there yet, but maybe having it so you could teleport to the other game hub via the, data wise, I don't think it would be very effective. But yeah, some way to go between the games, I could see that being added. I never really crossed my mind, honestly.
All right, next question. So could Call of Robloxia have map events like something like weather or ambience or levelution and destruction? Being that it's in various parts of Europe, I know that weather maybe played a part in some of that given the time of year that you were in.
Yeah, so I think that's relatively like I think that's a solid yes. Yeah, it depends on how I achieve certain levelution or weather effects, but for the most part, we have snow and phantom forces. I see no reason to not have snow. Rain's going to be interesting, but I mean, if I can figure something out for that, yeah, we could have rain. What else? Like levelution, grenades blowing up terrain and stuff. I can't do that on the current map, but potentially applying that into the map retroactively would be a solution to that. One thing we kind of ran into is voxel terrain is very unpredictable on where it's destroyed. So it's very like it's hard to make it look good. I guess that's going to be a problem, but
I imagine
we'll try it out.
Performance is maybe an X factor there as well.
Yeah. So like destroying buildings and stuff is probably going to be a no, just based on performance. A lot of moving parts and stuff is hard. It's hard to maintain performance on lower end devices, especially if we're going to have mobile support. I mean, we're kind of we're drawing a line in terms of what support on mobile we're gonna have. If you have like a iPhone 5, chances are you're not gonna run the game.
Yeah.
Like a Galaxy phone or any of the newer phones should handle it fine. So, yeah.
All right, next question. So in Call of Robloxia, will we see more cosmetics than just weapon skins? Perhaps something to wear on your player as a skin, or maybe just an actual prop like a hat or something like that?
Yeah, so my plan is to have full cosmetics. So like uniforms, hats, potentially charms, but at the same time having it so we have cosmetics that are out of line with potentially World War II uniform. Just like if you were to change your uniform to pink or some color other than the normal uniform, it's going to be an option to disable that on your player. Like as a player, you're not going to see it on other people, and that's going to at least please the crowd that doesn't want to play a game with pink Germans running around. Yeah. But like, yeah, along the lines of customization, hopefully we'll have more than Phantom Forces. I'm pretty sure we will. Even with guns, we'll have more than Phantom Forces. So, yeah.
All right, next question. You kind of touched on this earlier, but being as this is a World War II game, outside of the big players to be featured, could we see even smaller ones than some of the others like Australia or African or Middle Eastern nations?
Yeah. So I have a full spreadsheet. I did this with Phantom Forces as well, where I outlined guns, but this one's by country, so it's organized. For the most part, it's categorized by how I would roll out updates. So, like each country is going to have its own weapon tree, and respectively its weapon progression. And like this idea also applies to bigger countries. I mean, like if I were to roll out an update for like the British tree weapon group, I don't think I'd roll out all British guns at once. We would slowly add them into the group, or in chunks add them into the group. But yeah, I mean, I hope to represent most countries in World War II. So, yep.
All right. All right, next question. So this is the last two here are Phantom Forces based, but as far as the Votekick system in Phantom Forces, will we possibly see that getting a look at soon, or maybe the implementation of an anti-Votekick or something like that for trusted people?
Yeah, so this has been tossed around quite a bit, at least through Sema, our one of our developers, is a weighted vote kick system. So we record how many vote kicks you make in a game, and if that user has been followed up with a ban or not. And if it's abused in a way that we find, like we weigh it. So if you're vote kicking one guy over and over and over again, and it's not following up with a ban, then you're going to lose points on your account. And in which case, your vote kick is going to require more votes, or your vote by itself isn't going to be as powerful. I don't really know how we're gonna like show that, but at the moment, that's kind of the idea.
I guess maybe a progress bar as opposed to counting the votes individually would maybe make sense.
Yeah.
So if your vote doesn't
or we
count
just
as
have
much,
decimals or something. Yeah.
So in this case, could someone see their vote kicking privileges get taken away entirely?
Yeah. Yeah. If it's abused to the point where your votes aren't, like, if you're calling votes on the same user and nothing's happening to that user, then you're gonna just slowly make it almost impossible to vote kick a person. Yeah.
And for something like this, where people are experiencing vote kick against them in a large capacity, is there any way to kind of safeguard them if they're getting many kicks against them and nothing is being followed up with a ban? Is there something that could be reflected upon their account?
Potentially. That's something I'd have to put into like, we could potentially have it so their account has a number value tied to that. Like if their vote kicked a bunch, then like potentially it gets gradually harder to vote kick that user. That's a good way to apply a weighted system. That kind of didn't really think about that one.
All right, so final question here, and maybe this isn't as up your alley as others, but as far as Phantom Forces goes, could there be a possibility of more than 2 skin zones for weapons, maybe?
In core or Phantom Forces?
Phantom Forces, yeah. Or rather, is the skin system going to be... Do you foresee any changes possibly coming to the way that works?
So, for the most part, no. Maybe like a skin zone for attachments or a way to disable skins on certain attachments would be something we could add. But as of like base skin zone and secondary skin zone, I don't see that changing too much. But yeah, if we were to add a third skin zone, it would probably apply to attachments, not the gun model, because that would require us to go through every gun in the game and change them.
So on that note, could we also see something like Crosshair customization in the future?
Yes.
Or greater character customization?
So we have color customization already worked into the game. It's just not a feature. In terms of like crosshairs changing, I mean, it's going to require work, but we could totally do that. It would just be the same system as her color customization.
Gotcha. And then character customization as well. What does that look like for the future of Phantom Forces?
So at the very least, I'm going to be making hats. I want to get it in by December, but I'm unsure in terms of like pipeline, how fast that'll make it into the game. But like other than UI and assets, it's not going to require too much coding. So yeah.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Thank you for your answers on this. It's always very insightful, and at least for me, when talking about Call of Robloxia, it gets me excited for where the game can go, because it seems like y'all are really doing your due diligence there and really thinking about how to fine-tune everything.
Absolutely. So, we want to make sure we don't make the same mistakes going into this project as we did Phantom Forces. I mean, Phantom Forces was definitely a learning experience for us. So, like, for instance, Call of Robloxia, we've spent like 6+ months making the animation system for it. So, like, just a lot of the game codes being reworked all the time just to make sure we're going into it on the right foot. All of that, it takes time, and I mean, for the most part, we don't really have a deadline, so that sort of time expectation just keeps getting pushed back. But hopefully we make something that's good.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. So thank you for sitting down here with me today and answering these questions.
Anytime.
And,
for the most part, I want to at least make it known what our intentions are, or like where we are with development. So this is a good way to do it. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.